right, it's 6 o'clock. We have a lengthy agenda, so I'd like to call this meeting of the Goodyear Planning Commission to order. With that, could we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all. Could we have a roll call, please?
Luke Schlosser,
Here.
Ryan Peters,
Here.
Randy Barnes,
Here.
Vicki Hamilton,
Here.
Kathleen Shore. Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Item number 4, minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Peters made the motion to approve. Commissioner Hamilton seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, public comments. Anybody from the public that's here that wishes to speak on a non-agenda item this evening? See none. Thank you. Item number 6, disclosure of ex parte communications. Anybody from the commission? Seeing none. Item number 7, old business. Any old business? Nope. Okay. Item number 8, new business. This is 8.114-300-00002. It's a use permit for convenience use Taco Bell drive-through restaurant at 251 North Litchfield Road. With that, I will open the public hearing and staff presentation. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, commission members. Okay, we do have a use permit for convenience use tonight. It is for this existing Taco Bell restaurant right here. The reason we're looking at a use permit tonight is in 1981 when the site was developed. No record of a use permit was found, so now with looking to demolish the building and place a new one, we do need to come concurrent with our zoning, so the requirement for the use permit. This is the proposed site. Basically, the drive-through configuration will remain roughly as is today. It'll wrap around the building here and exit here. They will change up the site a little bit. We'll have one access now instead of kind of like the 2 points of access. They'll kind of separate the trash enclosure pickup away from the drive-through aisle. They'll also separate some of the parking that they had off that drive-through aisle. And these are the proposed building elevations. This is a new concept for Taco Bell, and they would like to use that here on the site. And this is just a landscape plan. They will construct a screen wall along the drive-through and add some additional landscaping to that frontage along Litchfield. In looking at the request, we do find it will be compatible with the area. It will not be at the detriment to the surrounding area. The business has been in operation for several years now, and staff is unaware of any sort of compatibility issues. The nearest residential is about 350 feet away, so we're not proposing any restrictions on drive-through hours or anything to that nature. We are recommending approval subject to the one stipulation in the staff report. Staff did notice this for the citizen review meeting and for this public hearing, and to date, staff has not heard of any public inquiries into this. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. Staff is available for questions. The applicant is here as well.
Okay. Thank you. Would the applicant wish to speak at this time? No, the applicant doesn't want to speak. Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't want to push Steve aside.
Come on up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Greg Hitchens, 2857 North, Norfolk, Mesa, Arizona. I'll be very brief with respect to your lengthy agenda. I was before you last month. Last month we came with a clean slate, a clean canvas. This week we've got an old tattered painting that's cracked and crumbling, and we're anxious to improve our drive-through that, as staff explained, is serving for the trash and for 2 entry points and parking. So we're excited with this new design, not only from the building elevations, but from how we're going to improve the flow on the site. So having said that, I seek your approval of the use permit and be happy to answer any questions you may have of me.
Okay, thank you.
Just one
Commissioner
quick
Short?
question. What is the length of the changeover construction that you're anticipating, just approximately?
We build these in about 90 days once the contractor gets there. So when there's demolition, sometimes it's a little longer, but maybe a few weeks. So we're pretty confident it'll be open this year.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? I just have to add that this particular Taco Bell has some fond memories, and probably for Commissioner Barnes as well. We're dating ourselves. We used to come from Tolleson Union High School because there was nothing to eat in Tolleson during lunch, during our 20, 30-minute lunch break, and go as fast as we could down Van Buren Street, and would order like growing boys, eat what we would order was 7 bean burritos, no onions, and a large iced tea. So I don't know if that's considered a conflict of interest, but I don't care. So anyways, I'm glad to see they're finally rebuilding it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And that was 30 years ago. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none, having no cards, with that, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case number 14300000002.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Peters. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor, say aye. 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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, item 8.2, approval of the Goodyear 2025 general plan recommendation. I will open the public hearing. Katie?
Thank you, Chairman and members of the
Once-
Commission.
Once again.
Yes. And I'm just, oh, there's the mouse. Waiting for the presentation to come up. But this is the second public hearing on the plan. We had a very, very brief presentation last time. Tonight, I will have a more formal presentation that I'm waiting for to come up. I don't think I have control of it in-house. But I will also go through tonight a little quickly because you've had several presentations on the general plan. So if it please the chair, I'll ask you that to go ahead and stop me at any point if you want some more in-depth explanation
Okay, sure.
about anything. Okay. While we're waiting for the presentation, I did give you an updated land use plan, just so you can see what the changes we've made so far. And then I've also given you an updated comment matrix. And so you can see all the changes that have been approved to the general plan since you received the hard copy of it. Since the last public hearing, we've had 3 additional comments come in. One was to make some adjustments to the land use plan in the area adjacent to and just south of where Cantamia is, so along Pecos Road, where it kind of meets the 303. There were some areas down there where we extended the scenic neighborhoods, and the owner of the property is looking to come in to develop the property, and we worked with them. They wanted to see some of the neighborhoods category in there, but you can see we extended the open space a bit to kind of adjust that to make sure that the hillsides in that area were being protected. And then we also added a village overlay in that area because they have been planning on commercial even when they originally in with their PUD.
Okay. Can I stop you for 1 minute?
Uh-huh.
I forgot about this. I just wanted to disclose, I talked to staff about it. I'm a real estate land broker. I represent several property owners in the city, in this planning area. I don't believe I have a conflict. If anybody has a problem with that, that's fine. I can step aside. But I've asked staff, they didn't think I had a problem with it. And so I have, on a regular basis, represent property owners and also have listings and escrows, but none of which I've discussed with anybody, so I don't think I have an issue. Does anybody have a problem with that? This time? All right. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting. I
No,
forgot to bring that up.
absolutely. Please do. The other change you can see on the front page, there's a lengthy addition, and that was actually from a general plan committee member. He wanted to make sure that the importance of the city center was really stressed in the general plan. And there was a little bit about the city center throughout the general plan, but there wasn't one objective just about it. So he made that recommendation. And then we still need to, there's an appendix C in the general plan that's about the public process. So just reminding, I'm continually updating that as we go through the process, and so that's documented for time, so in the future, the community can see the process that this went through. So I'll just stop now while we're waiting still. Are there any questions or concerns or comments about the recommended updates in the comment matrix or with the land use plan?
Any questions at this point? All right.
Okay. All right, well, I do have some general information. I mean, I know you all know this, but for the benefit of the public who might be watching at home, a general plan is a comprehensive, long-range look at our community. It's a statement of our vision, and it guides public decision-making. You are all a major part of that because it will guide you as you make zoning decisions in the future. The general plan is not a budget. It doesn't raise taxes. It's not a specific plan for specific developments, and it's not zoning. We're updating the general plan because state statute requires that we update it every 10 years. Also, Goodyear reached a threshold of 50,000, and when a city has a population over 50,000, there's additional requirements for a general plan, and so it's another reason we needed to update the plan right now. And there are a lot of requirements in state statute that we have to adhere to. There's specific elements that we have to address, but we can also expand the plan as we wish and include other things, such as economic development is not a required element, but it's really important to the community, so we included that as an element. I'm starting to get stuck again. We went through a very extensive public outreach process, and I have all sorts of lovely pictures that I can flip through real quick as soon as we get the presentation up. All in all, we had 63 public meetings, 650 unique participants throughout the process. And that may not sound like a lot, but I can tell you that there was a neighboring community that was excited when 3 or 4 people would show up to a meeting. Another community I know in the East Valley was updating their plan, and they had 700 participants, but they're 3 times our size. So it really just shows the commitment and dedication of our citizens. It was really exciting to see them come out to meetings, several people coming out to several meetings, and really getting involved and invested in the general plan update. And it's really what's made the general plan what it is, and it's truly a community document.
And how many meetings? 63?
63 meetings.
63?
So
Wow.
between the general plan committee meetings, open house meetings, I counted, when we would have booths at city events where people could learn about the plan while they were at a city event. So it includes lots of different types of ways of getting involved. We had events at high schools to reach out to the high school students. So yeah, it sounds like a lot, but a lot of they weren't always just traditional meetings. We really took the adage of trying to go to the public, since not everyone has time to come out to a public meeting.
It's a lot. Don't try to fool us. It's a lot of work.
I guess, is that Elmo? Oh, there. As you know, we had lengthy discussions in the past with the General Plan Committee about the land use plan, and we have gone to a more for lack of a better word, generalized general plan. We used to have 18 land use categories in the current 2003 general plan, and now we're proposing just 7 land use categories, including the city center. And then also using a variety of overlay districts to provide additional guidance. We have taken this out to the community, and there we go. Oh, almost. All right. Okay, let me back up then. I already spoke about this. And then here's all the great pictures from all of our events. And what we did was we had a really big push in the beginning with visioning and open house meetings, and then the General Plan Committee really got to work in 2013. And then we took back the draft plan and did another big push of public participation, going out to the community showing that. And then earlier this year, we had our formal 60-day review where we have to formally give the draft plan to our neighboring communities, agencies, Luke Air Force Base. We've also had open house meetings during this time, more events. And there's the summary. So that's the list of all the different public meetings we had over the last 18 months. So going into the general plan itself, the first couple chapters are an introduction and the data profile for the city. We plan to keep that data profile updated every year so that the general plan is a living document and doesn't need a full update, hopefully in 10 years. The third chapter is the vision, and you can see we have the vision and a fundamental strategy, which I'll talk about in a second, which is really generalized, and it talks about, what is our desired state, and then the fundamental strategy is just the general way we're going to achieve that. And then the bulk of the plan includes the goals, and then the objectives are how do you achieve those goals. So the vision created by the General Plan Committee is create a highly desirable and sustainable place for all to live, work, visit, and play. And what I talked about in the fundamental strategies, the really great thing about the public participation we did is when we started to going to events, we started to hear the same thing over and over and over. We need parks, we want transit, we want a connected community, we need an identity, we need more jobs and entertainment. And it was just over and over. So we decided we really wanted to capture it in these 9 fundamental strategies. And the thought was, as long as we focus on doing these things, we're headed in the right direction. And the whole theme, I think, of the general plan is providing more flexibility. So, we're not specifically getting into details about how we're going to achieve things, but just giving ideas of what we want to achieve. And I'll give you some examples of that. And it was also really exciting because we just had the citizen survey come out, and you can get that on our website if you're interested in it. And it, once again, just had the same thing. We need parks, we need jobs, we need entertainment. So it validated what we found in the general plan process. The 4th chapter introduces all those community goals. But then chapters 5, 6, and 7 delve into those goals. And you can see we not only have the goal, but we include the intent statement, and that's so that we can be clear about what we're trying to achieve. And the example I always like to give is if we want to say reduce car use or reduce how far people travel. Well, there might be a lot of ways to do that. We might do it through transit. We might do it through bringing jobs out to Goodyear and making jobs closer to people so they don't have to travel downtown. And so we're not, that's what I mean by the flexibility. There's a lot of different ways to provide to reach that goal, and so we want to make sure we're including those intent statements about why we're trying to do what we want to do. And then also just the economic recession taught us that we don't know what's coming around the corner. We don't know if it's going to be boom times or more of the same, so we have to be ready to be creative and address the community's desires any way we can. And then going back, as I started out, this is the 2003 land use plan with 18 land use categories, and now we're going to a more simplified land use plan. And again, the same theme is to try and provide more flexibility to the development community. Of course, there's still the rezone process. There's still the public hearing process where we invite residents, so we're not subverting that process. It's just making sure that the general plan isn't a hurdle to creating development and creating the vision for the community that the community has expressed. And some of the categories in there, for example, scenic neighborhoods. And it's not so much trying to focus on what the density is, but how the design is done. So you can see on the left there's traditional development, but we would be okay with more density if it's designed in a way that provides additional open space. In the neighborhoods, it's one neighborhood's district, but you can see the standards give more detail for where low density is okay, where medium density is okay, and where high density is okay. And then we also include a lot of example pictures so that we can be clear of what in the city is designed how we want it. So this example is in the city of Goodyear near Northern Subdivision, and the high-density residential development is really buried in the back, and they have to drive through the single family to get to the arterial roads. So there's a standard discouraging that type of design. And then there's pictures like this that are showing good design and how buffers are used to create the type of multifamily development we do want to see in the city. We also talk a lot about pedestrian orientation, walkability, and we give examples of places in the valley that have done that really well. We have a business and commerce, which can be anything from, like you can see here, office buildings, West Valley Hospital, but also commercial. The industrial is reserved around our airport and Luke Air Force Base, and those areas that maybe have things like an airport or overflight noise that are just higher intensity. And then we have overlay districts. So the one is we want to see village overlays. One of the major things we've been hearing from the community is we need more destinations, entertainment, recreation. We also have a transit-oriented development overlay. We heard a lot about wanting the light rail, but we are a far ways off from getting the light rail, but that doesn't mean we can't be building the steps now, creating bus routes and making sure those bus routes are extremely successful by creating the type of development that make them successful, like high density and walkability. And these are the areas for the TOD overlay along McDowell and Van Buren and Estrella. And the reason we picked those is because that's where everything is that we want to connect. And then, of course, we have the Luke-compatible land use overlay to protect that area under the Luke overflight and noise contours, which is highlighted there. And then a new requirement was to add an aggregate mining overlay, so we had to include this. So that's basically the floodplain areas in the river, but there's still a lot of disclaimers that they have to get their permits. It doesn't mean that it's automatically allowed. They still need zoning and permits and everything to do mining in that area. And then the other cool thing is there's a wildlife overlay, and this is all wildlife that the Game and Fish shared with us that is in Goodyear. So it's in the very southern part of Goodyear, so that's an area, it's all BLM-owned land that we just wanted to designate to recognize that it's there. And just this is an example, they were able to tag this cat, and this is his movement through the area. So that pink area is the BLM, so he's not quite walking in the wildlife corridor, so we need to put up some signs or something so he knows where it is. So back to the organization, implementation is going to be one of the big parts, and the piece that the Planning Commission really gets in is the implementation of the land use plan. Through the general, when a new development comes in, the first thing we do is see if the zoning conforms to what they want to do. If not, we go back to the general plan as a starting point to see what the vision for the area is. And it goes through this very basic development review process of general plan, zoning, site plan, and permits. The other way, all these policies and ideas and things go through the city system of the general plan to the city strategic action plan. And if you've been paying attention to the council meetings, you've been seeing a lot about the city's strategic action plan, how that connects to our budget now with the priority-based budgeting. And so there's a really strong tie between the general plan and the strategic plan, and that's a way that we implement all the policies. We also use master plans, look for grants, partnerships, our capital improvement program, and look for all sorts of ways to implement these things that are in there. And that basically concludes my presentation. Just to let you know of the upcoming schedule, if the general plan does move forward, we're having a work session on June 2nd with City Council. Then we'll be holding the public hearing on June 9th, and that's the meeting I recommend. If the public is only going to attend one meeting, that's the meeting they want to attend, because that's when we're looking for public input. And then we're going to update the plan based on public input and ask for council action on June 23rd. And there's my contact information if anyone watching at home wants to contact me and give me comments. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to personally thank you for all of your efforts. You shouldn't downplay all of your efforts. You've given us updates for months and months and months now, and just have done an outstanding job. And I'm sure we all agree that we appreciate it, and whatever else staff worked on it as well. And also the general plan committee. Is there anybody from the committee that's here?
Didn't see anybody. Oh, Peter.
Oh, that's right.
He's seen his presentations before.
Yeah.
He has.
So anyways, we really appreciate all your efforts and can't thank you enough. So,
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to work on it, working with you. The general plan committee was amazing to work with. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the commission at this point? All right, thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Did you fill out a card? You did? I didn't get it. Oh. Okay. Yeah, please state your name and address for the record.
Will do. My name is Alan Bodwin. I'm with LVA Urban Design Studio. I'm a professional land planner. And I represent a ownership group that Katie referred to that holds about 1,400 acres of land down in the Rainbow Valley area. She described the work that was done. I'll refer to it as item 2A on the matrix that she provided to you, because it seems to be a part of 2, but it's a distinct part of 2. And I want to state my thanks to Katie and the staff for listening and working at a very late hour with us. This just came up recently that we recognized what was going on here, and the ownership group that I do represent intends to be before you in the next year with a pretty significant zoning application, and Katie's work working with us helped us to ultimately look at this property and create something at the general plan level that we believe will help us bring a very exciting zoning application to you. I also want to state, as a professional land planner, I reside in the city of Tempe, and recently I was appointed by the mayor of Tempe, Mark Mitchell, to assist Tempe with their recent general plan. They've gone through this process now. In fact, last night, the voting public in Tempe approved the Tempe general plan, much like the process that you're under. And I can tell you, I was appointed to assist with that process and put many hours into helping the staff create the general plan for Tempe. And the reason I mention that is because I've looked at what the staff have done here and the work that you've done, and I can tell you that, in my opinion, the general plan that you're currently looking at and potentially moving forward to not only the city council but the voting public is an excellent document, and I would compliment the staff for the work that was done and the vision here that's expressed in this general plan. One of the significant elements of this is you moved from what formerly looked much like a zoning map to a true general plan. I think that was a huge step forward for Goodyear, and I'm excited about your future and what I see in this plan and what I see in the policy statements. And so with that, I'll sit down and urge you to vote yes on behalf of what you have in front of you tonight and move it on to City Council. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? All right, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any further discussion from the commission? Seeing none? I guess my only other comments, I set up a meeting when we first started this process and had some concerns, met with Katie, and I think Joe was there, I can't remember, and some other folks, and then our joint session with the council, and some of my concerns, Katie's and staff has answered them, and I don't really have anything new. So, again, thank you very much for your efforts, and we really appreciate it. Nothing else from the commission? All right, with that, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the Goodyear 2025 general plan.
All right, I have a motion from Commissioner Peters. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second from Commissioner Barnes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Katie. All right, thank you. Moving on to item 8.3, 14-5121. Resolution 14-1617, declaring the updated and amended version of the City of Goodyear Design Guidelines Manual as a public record and ordinance 14-1292, approving an updated and amended version of the City of Goodyear Design Guidelines Manual. And with that, I will open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm glad to be following the general plan that's getting presented. Because as you can see, the guidelines is also a different level in the general plan. So tonight, we're going to give you an idea of the design guidelines, and this is the table of content. The vision of the general plan, the strategies, I already explained to you, design guideline goal, and then Winter and Company and Norwinter is going to present the guidelines a little more detail. And then at the end, recommendations from you, this body, to the City Council. So as Kerry explained to you, the general plan is the umbrella of the whole city. And then we have different categories underneath the general plan. And one of the implementation tools that we use to implement the general plan is the design guidelines, the park master plan, the transportation master plan, and then the lower level, then it comes the zoning ordinance. So tonight, we're presenting to you the design guidelines. And the strategies that relate to design guidelines is as Kerry also explained to you, is 9 fundamental areas. And every chapter you will see in the document, design guidelines touch every single one of these. Create attractive places and diverse destinations. Design guideline will help you for the staff reviews and also the applicants, the architects, to create attractive places like a shopping center. It can be a neighborhood. So that to meet the strategy number 1. So one by one, the guidelines is also focusing on what the strategies of the general plan. And the design guideline goal, as part of the implementation tool, is to provide clear and instructive standards and guidelines for the design and review of residential, commercial, and industrial developments. And so underneath the goal, also we had the intent to promote the following. So increase pedestrian and multimodal connectivity, preservation and retention of environmental sensitive areas, energy efficiency and environmental sensitive designs. Some of these, for example, the landscaping, for example, if it is desert landscaping, it will help to create and to reduce the water consumption. Some of the strategies, specifically for the design guidelines, but also trying to implement the goals and objectives of a bigger umbrella, the general plan, and then coming down. When we're reviewing the cases, in our minds, there's going to be what strategies are we focusing on this specific shopping center or building, commercial, industrial. So these are the intents that will be listed in the design guidelines. Now, the Winter and Company was hired back in January to review our existing guidelines and to be able to focus how we create a little more flexibility in the document and be able to tell us is something we can do to make it a little more easy to use and friendly for not only for staff reviews internally, but also from the applicant perspective. So during different focus groups, we met twice with the development community, and we got the feedback not only from the last 3 or 4 months, but also during the last couple of years. Probably Planning Commission got some comments from different cases, and also City Council gave us some ideas about any concerns that they have. So this update is going to focus on flexibility and how to respond to some of those issues that people were telling us in the last couple of years. At this point, I would like to introduce Norwinter, and he's going to go in more detail some of the slides is showing the intent of the new guidelines and how staff is going to be using in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
All right.
Winter & Company has worked across the country in design review systems and in development regulations and standards, working with a wide variety of communities who have sought to maintain or establish a distinct image while also accommodating growth and change and encouraging investment in their areas. And what we've learned from that are some fundamental basics in terms of how to help clarify the way design policies are conveyed and administered, and at the same time that they do have to be custom tailored to meet each local situation. And that's what we have worked to do here with this update. It is an update. It is not a complete rewrite of the design standards and guidelines. It was looking at them and how to make them more workable and usable. Part of the initial step was to evaluate the existing conditions. And of course, what we found was that Goodyear has succeeded in establishing a very distinctive image, even though there are many communities within the valley that have design guidelines of various sorts. It's very clear when you cross the border and you know that you're in Goodyear. There's enough of a distinct palette of building and design and character and commitment to high quality that is noteworthy. And we all know that that enhances livability as is set forth in the general plan and also helps to attract investment. Those positive results, I think, are certainly recognized in many places, but there were concerns that maybe sometimes getting there was pretty difficult, maybe not as obvious or as understandable to the applicants, and sometimes perhaps the flexibility that some people felt was appropriate wasn't there. The standards dated more than a decade ago and were last updated in 2011 with some fairly substantial reformatting and consolidation of the document. But what we saw was there still were areas where clarification was needed, and particularly sometimes that idea of the intent statement at the level of design that we're operating was missing. There might be a very specific requirement, but no clear reason what the guideline was seeking to achieve. That means in some cases, people on both sides of the fence of administering a guideline are not quite certain when they can be flexible if they're not quite certain what the overall intent is. And so part of the analysis was that was needed. Also a clear link to the broader community policies, and you will see in the new updated draft document that there are now several citations from the draft general plan that with some discussion about how those broader policies translate down to the level of the design guidelines. There were certainly some areas in which just how to look at the context was important to understand. A broad guideline might be written that could have applied differently in different settings, even though the topics are organized by land use categories. So some further discussion about certain kinds of contexts were needed. And then some other specific design issues related to four-sided design, that is how to treat all four sides of a building and make certain that it's compatible with the community, as well as some landscaping guidelines and others related to materials. So ultimately, the basic strategy came down to these four steps. One is to enhance predictability by getting clearer in some of the language about what was intended, to clarify where indeed flexibility is available, and conversely thereby to imply where there are some absolute expectations that the community has in the guidelines. And to address the idea of what we would call visual continuity versus diversity, how to have an overall sense of being related to Goodyear and yet at the same time reflect differing sub-neighborhoods, individual development projects, and individual properties, and while all the time maintaining high quality of design. So the project was organized into a series of steps. in terms of how we were to take on the update of the document itself. One was simply inserting text and bullets throughout the body of the main document. Many of those are intent statements that are now crafted to talk at a little bit higher level, to introduce a series of guidelines that follow them, to help people in interpreting how they're to be applied. And part of the reasoning there is that there may be a situation in which a different design approach might be proposed that isn't specifically recognized in the guidelines, but could meet the intent statement. And therefore, if someone does have that different but creative idea, the intent statement allows that kind of a discussion to occur, still within an objective realm to say, are we achieving what we're seeking to there? To help clarify that, the second part of the strategy was to insert more graphics to help illustrate the guidelines that already exist, and to use charts and tables in many cases to expand the range and types of examples, and that particularly shows up in the appendices that we crafted. Now, I'll spend just a minute on this slide, and then we'll move quickly through some of the visual examples. But this idea of flexibility was a key one, and I've talked about the intent statements. There really are three different levels of which flexibility is built into the document, and we'll help to clarify that and expand on some of them. One is that many of the guidelines actually give you choices on how to meet it. It's a menu of action items, if you will. And in some cases, we've clarified those or added to those menu lists. Then there are the intent statements I've already referred to. And then lastly, there still remains the action option, which is to have a planned area development where you can actually negotiate a whole different set of guidelines for a particular development. But part of the objective was to offer more flexibility within the basic review process so that fewer projects needed to go through the PAD in order to get that kind of flexibility. An example of some of the intent statements under commercial use and architectural standards, these are three of them. One is to establish an overall sense of relatedness, that is, that there's a sense of that being part of Goodyear while also conveying that identity of individual areas. To assure that buildings are designed to have a human scale and are visually interesting and invite pedestrian activity, and to ensure that all four sides of a building receive consistent architectural treatment. But that said, recognizing that there are different levels of treatment of a facade of a building depending on where it's located within a development, and we'll talk about that briefly in a minute. Some other examples of some of the intent statements relate to other more specific areas, and that is related to signage, indicating that there may be some room for flexibility in some cases, but that a primary thing that property owners need to do is think more in advance about how signs are going to work in the future, and particularly with respect to how, as landscaping matures, they will be seen. Another key area that we worked on was color, and helping to explain or define where flexibility in color is appropriate and the different applications of colors, as that has come up particularly with respect to corporate recognized logo colors, and also the discussion of just what is the color palette that's expressed in the general comments and the general policies relating to the Sonoran Desert. So those are some of the intent statements that are embedded now in the updated document. I'll show you some of the appendices. Because it was easier to actually consolidate a lot of the discussion in a series of appendices and also to illustrate a wider range of examples. Many of the design topics that are in the main body are further expanded on in an individual appendix. Here's an example of one on public art showing a variety of ranges of public art, from conventional freestanding sculpture to items that might actually be functioning elements of the landscape, site furniture, for example, but that are custom designed, even to ones that are surfaces of walls. And of course, there are a wider variety of public art, but the intent here is to illustrate an expectation that these are things that actually help to enhance the public realm. Each of these appendices has some introductory text that explains that intent and objective and links it back to the operational guidelines in the main body of the document. The appendix related to wall types is particularly important. And what was suggested is that there are actually three different categories of walls. Those that are really the conventional front of the building, that are highly pedestrian-oriented, should have a high degree of transparency, of windows where you can see activities, and also have other architectural treatments that give them a sense of scale and visual interest. There are others that also will be seen by the public and frequently walked by pedestrians, but are less the primary wall of the building, where perhaps a little bit lesser level of detail is appropriate. And then finally, there are walls that are normally considered the backside, but the great, brilliant idea in Goodyear is that there is no backside of a building, that every side of a building is seen by someone, whether it's an abutting neighborhood or an abutting user of similar use, but that nonetheless, those are important walls to consider, but that a somewhat lesser level of design detail can be appropriate there. These have all been achieved presently, but each one has been a long, lengthy discussion in some cases. And so the idea is to set up this categorization of wall types early on so that applicants have a better sense of what might be expected. Another appendix illustrates the wide range of palette of materials that is appropriate in Goodyear, even though one intuitively thinks, well, we have stone and masonry and stucco. Well, there actually are a wide range of the ways in which those are presented, and that's part of the intent here. And also introducing or refining the idea that there are categories of materials, those that are primary, those that are secondary, and those that might be used as accent. And that in some cases, more newer experimental materials may be appropriate, but particularly at the accent level. So this appendix illustrates that palette of materials that is appropriate in the community. And here you see a wide range of them, including some that are more industrial or high-tech, edgy, if you might, that are appropriate as accents in many places. But we also note that there are some special contexts where that kind of design, a material might be even more widely used, such as down around the airport. There's a similar appendix about color and introducing or clarifying the use of base color and accent color and how they might be used throughout the city. And particularly also with respect to their application to corporate logo colors is introduced in that area as well. There's another appendix that illustrates more the intent of public space. There's been a concern that for many commercial and mixed-use developments in particular, while there is open space, the quality of it as active, usable public space is falling short, or it's hard to achieve. And so the intent here is to show a wider range of those kinds of active uses. There also are some appendices that address residential design, single-family entrance definition, and treatment of garages. Many of these are illustrating principles that are embedded in the existing guidelines, and there are references back to those guidelines. Finally, there is a summary checklist that can be used, particularly for the three-sided wall treatment discussion. And there's a series in the document for commercial and mixed-use wall types and for industrial and employment wall types. And they have lists of columns for each of those three wall type categories, and then a series of design categories where literally one would check off to see are enough of the guidelines being met to meet the expectations for a type A, B, or C wall. The illustration here is the draft version. Your document shows the completed tables, which are filled in with cross-references to the guidelines in the main body of the document that would help in the interpretation of whether or not those individual guidelines have been met by a particular project. So this will provide a very orderly process for considering a design. It's sort of in the whole, looking at all of those aspects that particularly relate to the treatment of the wall types, and should really help to inform and make that process a more predictable and understandable one, and easier to administer for staff. That concludes my part of the presentation and the overview of the document itself. And for the last couple of slides, I'll turn it back over to Hector.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your thorough presentation. Any questions for him? All right, thank you. Hector?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can see there on this final slide is the recommendation from Planning Commission to City Council. The intent is to go to the City Council on June 9, that next step. From this body, we're asking the recommendation from you to City Council. And that's number one. Number two, the first one is a resolution to keep the document as a record, and the second one is to adopt the ordinance. So you can vote for those two items.
Okay, and you want to keep those separate? Is that right, Joe? The two resolutions? Make a motion.
They can go together. I mean, it's part of the whole document.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Any questions?
Anybody? Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. You put a lot of work into it as well with all the staff, so, and thank you again. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none. With that, I'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Thanks again, gentlemen. I appreciate it. So, with that, do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the resolution declaring the updated amended version of the City of Goodyear Design Guidelines Manual as a public record.
I have a motion from Vice Chairman Peters. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thanks again.
And Mr. Chairman, I move to approve ordinance
I'm
approving
sorry.
the updated and amended version of the City of Goodyear Design Guidelines Manual. I hope I followed that procedure correctly.
Sorry, because I didn't, even though I asked about it. Do I have a motion for that as well?
So moved.
I mean, a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thanks again. Eight point four, 630-0002, amendment to the comprehensive sign package for the Canyon Trails Plaza. There's no public hearing on this one. So, Steve?
Hey again, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. This is an amendment to the sign package for the Canyon Trails Plaza. That plaza is about 20 acres. As part of the Canyon Trails PAD, zoning was approved in 1999. It is designated for commercial use. The site plan here and the sign package were approved in 2006. And what we have here is Straya Parkway, Parkway Village. We've got that center anchored by Safeway to the south, and to the west we have some existing residential lots. And this is the approved site plan for the center. What we're looking at tonight are these three office buildings here. This single-story building's existing, as well as this one. This one will be built sometime in the future. And this is the proposal from the applicant. What they have seen is some of their existing tenants, some of their proposed tenants have all asked for signage. They would like to put their business names on the building. And this is the proposal. Each tenant space would have its own sign in a designated sign band area here. And that would be on the east and west elevations. This shows what would happen if a tenant took up more than one space or potentially took up an entire floor. That sign band would increase. And this goes to show you what two tenant spaces would look like. What would regulate that would be no more than 80% of their leased frontage could have signage. And this is the single-story building. This building, per the sign package, was the only one in the office complex to have signage. The two-story building was not permitted signage. Through negotiations back in 2005, 2006, the applicant eventually chose to have an extra monument sign along Estrella Parkway versus signage for the two-story office buildings. But again, since that time, the applicant has found out that the tenants do feel a need for signage, individual signage on their space. And the signage for the two-story office buildings would basically mirror what you see out there now on the single-story. It'll be the individual letters, aluminum letters painted dark bronze, and they would be non-illuminated. And this basically just shows you a format that those letters would take. In looking at this proposed amendment to the sign package, we do find that given the consistency that the applicant is proposing, that the signs will basically mirror what's existing out there, that this would be appropriate for the buildings. They have kept the design consistent with what's out there and have proposed the same amount of signage, 1 square foot per leased frontage. So they're not asking for more signage than what the single-story office building. So we do find that would be consistent. They also are not proposing to illuminate the signs, so proposal to have the signs on the west face fronting those existing residential lots, we do not feel that would adversely impact those residences. Basically, we're looking at just non-illuminated signs and about 250 feet in between the two uses. So we do not think that would adversely impact those lots. With that, we are recommending approval subject to the one stipulation in the staff report. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions, as is the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve? The applicant?
Yeah, we have a question over here.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no, I was shaking my head.
Oh,
You know me, I'm all for
looks like you're leaning towards the microphone.
giving them a little more signage, as long as we can keep lots of trees.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing for Steve then, for staff? Is the applicant here, wish to speak?
I'm here, I'm all for brevity, so.
Okay. Me too, sir. Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? With that, I guess we'll call for a motion. We don't have a public hearing open, so do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number 14-630-00002.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Have a second from Commissioner Barnes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. 8.5, 14-0521, comprehensive sign program for Centerra Crossings to allow for deviations from the sign ordinance within the planned area development district at the southeast corner of Van Buren Street and Estrella Parkway. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman stated, Centerra Crossings will be just down the street at Estrella Parkway. This is the Safeway Center here, and this is Walgreens and Fletcher's Tires. And those of you who were here in 2011 when we did a PAD amendment for this property will recall this concept plan. The amendment allowed for this multifamily use in addition to the commercial uses. And now that we have a site plan for an ER facility right at the corner of Estrella and Van Buren, the owner has to go through this process to get the comprehensive sign plan approved. And per the sign ordinance, when they're asking for something beyond what's allowed by right in the sign ordinance, it needs to come before you and council for approval. The first deviation they are requesting is for 2 commercial single-user monument signs, one for the ER facility and one for a potential fuel station that would require a use permit also coming back before you. typically, each commercial user in a commercial center goes on a multi-tenant sign, they don't have their own monument sign. We felt in this case that the one for the ER is warranted because it's essential that people traveling to the facility know exactly where to access that facility. And the one for the fuel station is one that's typically allowed throughout the city to price or to advertise pricing information. The other variation that they are, or deviation that they are requesting is the height and area of the multi-tenant sign. It is over and above what is allowed in the code, but for reference, the multi-tenant sign at Safeway is 12 feet. The ones being proposed here are 14 feet high. The third deviation is for additional wall signage for that ER facility. Again, because of the nature of the facility, we felt that its location and the facility itself should be visible from all directions. So we are recommending approval of the sign package subject to the stipulations, and we ask that you recommend that as well.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Any questions of staff? Thank you. Does the applicant wish to speak?
We're here, again, we're available for questions.
Okay.
And we'd also like to thank Karen and the team for a lot of hard work.
Thank you as well for your brevity. Anybody from the public wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman.
Seeing none, no more questions for anybody? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number 14-630-00001.
One more down.
Oh, one more down. What? Case number 14-0521.
That's usually what I do. I'm not allowed to do that. We're good. All right, I have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton. Do I have a second?
I will second.
I have a second from Commissioner Barnes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 9, staff communications. Joe, Sherry? No? Is that it? I would like to go back to my high school days about the burritos. 29 or 39 cents, if I remember correctly. It makes me feel really old. And it was 7 burritos, I'm not lying.
Protein's a good thing.
Protein, exactly. All right, with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.